Hello and welcome to another magical episode of Read, Rant, and Review. We are here to talk about a book called Touch of Power, a book that actually was on my TBR for quite a while, and I was like, you know what? Let's spoil ourselves. Let's get a book that we've been thinking about and have been unsure about, and let's see how we do. So how did we do? First, let's use my tablet, Guilty Spark, to read the synopsis. Laying hands upon the injured and dying, Avery Kazan assumes their wounds and diseases into herself. But rather than being honored for her skills, she is hunted. Healers like Avery are accused of spreading the plague that has decimated the territories, leaving the survivors in a state of chaos. Stressed and tired from hiding, Avery is abducted by a band of rogues who, shockingly, value her gift above the golden bounty offered for her capture. Their leader, an enigmatic captor-protector with powers of his own, is unequivocal in his demands. Avery must heal a plague-stricken prince, the leader of the campaign against her people. As they traverse the daunting 9 mountains beset by mercenaries and magical dangers, Avery must decide who is worth healing and who is worth dying for. So basically I've just been kind of on a fantasy kick reading about healers. I'm kind of bored these days with assassins, and I'm into healers now. I've got some of my notes here in my notebook, and then I started taking notes in my phone, so it's very random. But I listen at work, and a lot of times I will just write my notes when I get back to my cleaning closet where my notebook is. But for this one, I wanted to write as I went, so the phone started to happen. The main character doesn't waste too much time getting captured by these guys that we heard about in the synopsis. And you can tell that they're trying for a kind of poor man's 5-man band. I have a whole video about a 5-man band, and it's actually one of my favorite tropes. Anyway, we do have some of the archetypes, such as the big guy and the heart and the leader, but there's a couple of other characters who don't really get any personality, and I was wondering why the author dropped the ball so hard on them. As for the big guy and the heart characters, they are very, very standard and stereotypical. We are not trying anything new or untested with these characters. As you probably noticed from the blurb, this is the type of healing magic where the healer assumes the injuries that they are healing. It's a fairly common thing that people rely on because healing magic can often just feel too powerful in your story if there's no consequences to using it. So it's a very common trope to have the healer take on the injuries. And then of course she heals faster than the other person would have, but there's still consequences to her using her powers instead of her just being able to heal everyone whenever she wants to. There is, however, a lot of other magic in this world, and there are a lot of types of magic, and it felt like a little bit too much. Like, the author got a little bit too excited about, like, naming all these different types of magic, and some of them definitely could have been, like, combined into, like, one type of magic. Like, this isn't from the book, but it struck me as, like, we have wind mages and air mages, and they're different for some reason. It's like, just call them all air mages or something. Oh, we have one of my least favorite fantasy tropes. It is a girl character who gets to use daggers. She gets to use daggers. Why wouldn't she? Why would they want to teach her how to use a sword? No, silly girl. Daggers. I did see in someone's review of this book that there wasn't a romance in it. There is. It's just an incredibly slow burn that is mostly saving up more of the romance for the next book. But the romantic interest is very stereotypical, broody, I don't like you, I'm gonna do mean things to you, and eventually you will come around and find out that I have a wounded soul. He's that guy. He's that guy. And I mean, I enjoy that trope sometimes, and he wasn't terrible, but he's that guy. This is also a sort of road trip fantasy story, so if you don't like the kind of fantasy stories that travel and go from point A to point B with adventures along the way, this book is not going to change your mind. This is doing nothing groundbreaking with that either. Sometimes it really felt like a collection of side quests. Like, it was very video gamey at times, where all of a sudden the characters would encounter a person and I'd be like, oh, here we go, we got a side quest, that's a quest hook right there. We're gonna go free some orphans or something. That didn't happen in the book, but you know what I mean. Like, that all of a sudden there'd just be something that would sidetrack them from their main mission, and it felt very video gamey. I wouldn't have minded if the characters were deeper, but since we're not working with very deep characters and then the plot is kind of there wasn't really anything for me to cling on to. There's also more of something I'm finding really common, especially in YA, and I don't know, do people assume that teenagers are dumb? There's a whole lot of showing and then telling immediately afterward. Let's say a character does something soft, and then seconds later, another character will be like, he was a big softie. And it's like, I know. I was there 10 seconds ago. I don't remember being a teenager that well because it has been quite a while, but I don't remember having that much trouble with my reading comprehension that I wouldn't understand that a character blatantly doing something meant that they were doing the thing. It was just all over this book. The characters would do a thing and then they would reiterate it afterward, just in case you somehow missed it. We also have the drawn out, the two love interests have to hate each other for a really long time, and after a while, just because I know it's the trope and I know what's gonna happen, I was like, would you should get to the part where you can get along already? I'm getting real sick of your bullshit, both of you. And then it just becomes that whole obnoxious, do I really have feelings for him? No, I don't have feelings for him. And just repeat until the very end of the book, and I hate that. Alright, now we're on to the notes that are on my phone. This book has a bit of a problem where important character building scenes feel glossed over or rushed past. Like, there was a scene where the main character tells us that her love interest was acting out of character for a while, but we're not shown it. Why don't you show us that training sequence so we can decide for ourselves if he seems like he's acting out of character? There's a large plot point in this book about these man-eating flowers, these death lilies, and every time they come up, all I can think about is the Simpsons scene.
Oh no! It's eating us!
Not a chance.
Wow, Dad, how did you do that?
It's a flower.
Something else that threw me off is something that I'm finding I'm more and more annoyed by in my fantasy reading, and that is modern-sounding language. Everything will be going along, sounding perfectly fitting for the world, and then all of a sudden the characters will be like, the guys. She was always calling her group of captors, quite frankly, the guys. Sounds like she's like in college, like, I'm hanging out with the guys. There was also Mojo, Killer Smile, Do Your Own Thing, and Wow. All of which don't feel to me like they fit into a medieval fantasy setting. Also, a couple of characters were called monkeys by the other characters, and it's never explained why. Like, you get the idea that it's because of, like, the land that they come from, but what is that land? Why are they called monkeys because they come from there? It's very confusing. I don't know. Much like some important character building scenes, the fight scenes in this book were very brushed over. This author has absolutely no interest in writing dynamic fight scenes. It was essentially a very Shakespearean, they fight, and then the battle is over. The main character in this book is in a semi-constant state of being kidnapped. She's kidnapped by the main guys at the beginning, and then she's just being kidnapped, grabbed, snagged, by various people throughout this entire book. Every now and then one of the other guys will get kidnapped and she'll have to go rescue them, but mostly it's her. She's just always kidnapped.
Everyone's been captured. I've been captured. Hey!
She's also very blasé about it. She's just like, ho-hum, I've been kidnapped by someone else, better make the best of it. Eventually, she gets kidnapped by the main villain, and he is a death mage who has sexiness mind control powers. Why? That was the most confusing thing. You've got all these classifications for your different magic users, but your death mage is mind controlling people with hotness. Fortunately, the main character is like at least slightly immune to his sexiness mind control powers, just enough where she can't be completely controlled by him, but we can still have all those moments of, oh, is she going to give in to his mind control and smooch him instead of her romantic interest? I also got to thinking about the logistics of the healers in this world. Would a healer fix someone who is missing a limb? Would the limb grow back, like Deadpool style? Or because she keeps the scars of wounds that she's healed. So, like, would her arm just be gone forever, or would it grow back? At one point, the main character and the villain, I'm pretty sure, like, mind meld, but he somehow doesn't figure out her plan? It's confusing. His powers are confusing. Sometimes he can read minds and sometimes he can't, and it's just like when and why, and I don't know. When we finally get to meet the guy that she was like originally kidnapped to come heal, that prince that we heard about in the blurb, I was hoping for a nuanced character because we were setting him up to be nuanced, where she's like, he did these bad things, and then they're like, well, actually, those were good things. And I was like, oh, shades of gray, like the bad things he did, some of them actually were bad, but some things actually were good. No, he's just a sweet cinnamon roll, and is just nice, and it was disappointing. And I mean, with how shallow the other characters are, I should have expected it, but I still hoped. I still had hope. The main character has a sister named Noelle. Ask me how I know that. It's because every single time that the sister is mentioned, the main character says, my sister, Noelle. I hadn't heard anything from my sister, Noelle. Or, Noelle, I said, she was my sister. Never can we have a moment where you might potentially forget both her sister's name and the fact that they are sisters. The ending of this book is very much leading you on to the next book. It's doing one of those things where it's not quite a cliffhanger, but it also doesn't feel like an ending. It feels like the middle of a much longer book. It feels like just when things were maybe starting to get going, we're done. A few less side quests, we probably could have had this be the middle of one whole book instead of having it be part of a series. I'm not really super interested to read the next one either. I heard that it gets more political, but I don't like politics in fantasy. It's one of my least favorite things, and with these characters being so shallow, there's probably really nothing to keep me going. So, probably not gonna continue this series, unfortunately. I was kind of surprised, though, when the book ended. As you know, I was listening to audio, because I'm always listening to audio. I found out it was published by Harlequin, which is different, because I thought Harlequin really was only interested in sexy, smutty romances. And this is not sexy or smutty. In fact, there's barely a romance. It's just will they, won't they, the book. So that was interesting. Also, on the subject of the audiobook, I would recommend highly you putting this audiobook on a higher speed. I sped it up more than I do with any other book because this audiobook narrator read so slowly. Holy cow. Something else I forgot to mention, I thought it was in my notes, but I guess it's not. Yeah, it's not in my notes, but sometimes, like, the characters are really struggling to have realistic emotions. Like, there's a death, and it's gone, like, it is a well-loved character that everybody is connected to, and their death is just over. And I was like, well, maybe they're coming back. You know, maybe they'll be resurrected. No! They're just dead, and they're barely ever mentioned again. Like, some people give me a hard time for my characters not mourning enough in my books, but, like, at least I have some. These people got over it so fucking fast. If I was the ghost of this person who died, I would be so pissed at how fast my friends got over my death. Barely mention me again. We are given more of a sob story of somebody's tragic backstory dead characters than we're given of this person who we've gotten to know through like half the book. Why? It's bad, Nigel. I think I gave this book 2 stars. I'm probably gonna stick by that, but honestly, going back through and like remembering stuff about it, I'm like, maybe it was really a 1-star book. But a lot of people do like this book. It has a higher than a 4 rating on Goodreads, so don't take my word for it. Give it a chance if you're interested. But overall, I found the characterization to be shallow, the world building to be shallow, and the plot to be kind of meandering. So, yeah. Disappointing for a book that I've had on my TBR for so long. If you liked this book review, I have a ton more here on my channel. You're sure to find something else you've heard of. They're all arranged in a nice playlist for you. And if you can't get enough of me, you can also check me out over on my Patreon, where I have exclusive videos not seen here on the regular channel. You can also follow me on all of my social media, links in the doobly-doo. And if you are interested in trying out a different fantasy romance, you can check out my book, The Wolf of the Hawk, available now on Amazon, with the sequel coming out soonish. Soon-esque. Nigel does not approve. He just glared at me. I'm sorry. I know soon-esque isn't a word. But we will see all of you again next time with whatever it is we happen to be doing next time. Bye!
Let me explain. No, there is too much. Let me sum up.
Steve, Kit, Hidden Glade, Persephone, Light Julie, OS, Anna, Belle, Patrick, Anne Sophie, Callison, Artemis, Shelby, Zaire, Jesper, Irene, Scribbling Cat, Savvy, Jenny, Amanda, Lisa, Sarah, Lennox, and Merween. That old black magic has me in its spell. That old black magic that you weave so well. Icy fingers up and down my spine. That same old witchcraft when your eyes meet mine.